and welcome to Answering the Call, Maine's Veterans' Voices, what we hope will become a regular program of reporting the memories, the remembrances, the stories of our wonderful veteran community in Maine. I want to thank Carmine Pecorelli, who's been with us today, or who will be with us today, for joining us to share his stories from World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. Answering the call. That's what Carmine did for us. Carmine, let's just start the discussion at the beginning. You grew up in New Jersey, an Italian American family. Talk a little bit about your growing up. Were your parents immigrants? How old were they when they came to this country?
No, my parents were first families, the Italians that came over. Many of them came over to work. 80 came over to work on the reservoirs for the state of for New York City to bring water down from the Adirondacks. But they were immigrants. The grandparents were immigrants, but their children served in World War I. They became citizens in 1900, and they just, I had to speak Italian now. They would say, Dio benedice America. That's God bless America. And they would tell me and my brother and sister the difference between how they lived in Italy and the way they were treated and lived in the United States.
Wow. Now, at the time of Pearl Harbor, you went down and tried to sign up, but you were only 14 years old. Tell me about Pearl Harbor and what it meant and how it impacted you.
It was December 7th. I was at Times Square going to the movie to see the Fighting 69th, the Irish regiment for the New York Guards, and they had a sort of called the Fighting 69th. So we went to see the Fighting 69th. When we came out, I was with a friend. When we came out, we saw the crowd around the New York Times building with the information. You know, the news travels around they had that an electric, that Pearl Harbor was bombed. And we knew right then and there that Pearl Harbor was bombed. And we knew right then and there that we were going to enlist. And we knew right then and there that we were going to win. And that was Sunday. On Monday, the lines were so long that men and women were enlisting in the Army or the Marine Corps or the Navy or the Coast Guard. They were standing in line to enlist. The patriotism was a beautiful thing to witness.
I'll say.
None of them were draft dodgers.
Do you remember Roosevelt's famous Day of Infamy speech? Did you listen to that on the radio?
Yes, I did.
And then you went and tried to enlist, but you were 14 years old.
I was 14 years old, so I since they federalized the National Guard, they did a militia in all of the states. And I had an uncle that was a lieutenant, and I said, would you sign me in? So when I was 14, I served in the New Jersey militia. But I wanted to go. I always wanted, when I was 7 years old, people said, what do you want to be when you grow up? I said, a soldier. I don't know how that happened or why, but that's what my eye was on. So it wasn't federal service. And then when the time came, I was getting close to 18. I asked my father to sign papers. I enlisted in the Navy because the Army, the Marine Corps weren't taking volunteers, but the Navy were taking those who wanted to sign up. But you had to sign up. I was on what they call a short I had to sign the papers, and I had to stay in until I was 21 years old. And then they would discharge me, and I had to spend 3 years in the reserves, and I did that.
But now
And
let's not get ahead of the story. You dropped out of high school, right, in order to enlist.
I never went to high school. I had no confidence in myself. I didn't think I was a loser. I didn't think that I could make it. So I just figured I'd go to work. The depression was on, and help bring money home so we could eat,
So
have
you
food.
dropped out of school, you enlisted, you ended up in the Navy. Tell me about the Navy. What was your experience? Where were you assigned? What were your jobs?
After boot camp, I went aboard a minesweeper, the USS Dynamic, and it was in the Battle of the Atlantic. And we went searched for mines. We searched for submarines, but I was on uh, the U.S. Dynamic. It was a minesweeper, and then radar came into being, and they needed students. So I was sent to Quonset Naval Air Station to learn to be a radar man.
Oh,
And the radar was being worked on by Harvard and MIT. And there were some posts I was at where the civilian engineers were teaching us how to use radar.
now how did you get chosen to take that training, particularly a guy without any even high school?
They needed me.
Okay, I get it.
They needed someone. You know how you do it, you, and you. And
Yeah.
but I'll tell you, I started to get self-confidence. I started in my life to say, yes, I can do it. And I started to take a sense of pride in me.
And did you go up and did you end up managing people? Did you have, I assume you started out at the bottom, but by the time the war was over, what was your rank and what was your job?
When the radar came, they set up at teams, and we learned how to bring aircraft home when the government pilots would get lost. And by the radar pips, we would plot their course. We couldn't give the command. We would have to pass it on to an officer, and an officer would give the command. And we'd get calls like one night. Our code name was Mickey, and I had the duty, and the call came in. This is, and it was, I don't know the pilot's name. I'm over at the Atlantic. I have no wingman. I'm lost. It's dark. I can't see the ground. I don't know where I am or where I'm going. And the duty officer said, Pecorelli, you've had experience on this SK piece of radar. Bring them home. And so I sat at the controls, and I would tell the officer, tell him to put on his IFF, identification friend or foe. That was a giveaway that you knew where the friendly planes were.
Right.
And I said, have him put it on and fly a 10-mile box so that I would know where he is. And naturally, the pilot was anxious. You could tell it in his voice when he would call. Our code name was Mickey. He says, Mickey, have you seen anything? Oh, we're flying and we're going to get you. We're going to get you. And once they put that square in and I plotted it, I told the duty officer, tell him he's found, and we're going to bring him home to the Quonset Naval Air Station. And that's what we would do. We would encourage the pilot in our words. Oh, you're doing fine, fine. You are doing fine. And we did. We brought him home by having a big searchlight on our base and a searchlight on an Army base. And I requested that they set it up so that the arc, the light that was a light to discover planes, when they crossed, when two crossed, I said, in the middle of that X is where you're going to land. That's where the Quonset Naval Air Station
Wow.
is. And I brought him home. And he said, he didn't know me, but he knew a code. He said, "Thank you, Mickey." And that was our, that was
Did
the
you
code.
ever meet any of those pilots you brought in like that? I wondered if they ever
No,
come and
no,
try to find you.
no.
What an experience. Now, is that what you did through the end of the war? Were you doing radar?
After the war, with the GI Bill, I made a decision that I would get a high school diploma to go on to college. So at 21 years old, I started the ninth grade. And to be serious about it, I went to a private school called Scarborough School. I had to live on campus. And this way I wouldn't be fooling around. And I graduated there in 39. And then from there, I went to the Citadel, the Military College of South Carolina,
Sure.
because I always had a desire to be a cadet, to wear a cadet uniform. And
Even though you'd been in the Navy.
even though I was in the, well, see, I couldn't enlist in.
Yeah.
Well, what happened when I got into the Army Reserves, they said, we need someone with naval experience to teach us how to get on the landing craft. So I used that training with great pride, because not only did I get a self-confidence in myself, but I treated the others where they got self-confidence in what they could do.
So you tried to help the guys below you.
Yes. Yes.
Well, that's the way it's supposed to work. That's
the
a
way it's
good
supposed
way
to
to have.
work. Yeah.
So the GI Bill was a big deal for you. Made all the difference.
It was so wonderful, Senator, because when I finished my studies, I went to the University of Edinburgh in Scotland.
Sure.
And I asked veterans there, when you came home, what did they do for you? And they said, nothing. I said, you didn't get education like the GI Bill? No. Our country, America, showed their gratitude to every veteran in that GI Bill. Many went to college that couldn't because of the depression. But they took advantage of the GI Bill. It wasn't in England. It wasn't in any of the other countries, but America did it.
Well, I've told a lot of people around here that I think the two most important federal government actions of the 50s were the GI Bill and the interstate highway system.
Yes, absolutely.
Those were the things that really projected our country forward and enabled people like you there. I suspect there's no way you could have done college without the GI Bill. Is that true?
That is correct. That is correct.
Now, okay, so you go into the service, you go into the Navy, and my Navy friends are going to wonder about a guy who always wanted to be in the Army but ended up in the Navy. The Navy was second choice, but we won't dwell on that. But then comes Korea. Tell me about that. Did you volunteer to go to Korea?
On active duty. I stayed in the when I came out. I stayed in the Reserve Army units, the 78th Infantry Division, and we were at on duty when it was, I believe, July the 3rd, where they crossed the 38th parallel, and we were at Fort Training for the 2 weeks reserve training, and we thought we were going to go right over to Korea. but they didn't activate at that time and during that period. They activated certain units that were needed, like a transportation unit. They didn't have the whole division go into duty. And so I was able to, in the summer, be active with the active reserve. But during the school year, I was granted leave from the reserve unit and I attended the Citadel. It was a dream of mine to go to a military college. And I was accepted at the Citadel. But during the summer, I'd go back on active duty. But I was on active duty when the Korean War started, when they crossed the 38th parallel.
You were on active duty in the Army at this point.
Yes, I was. That is correct.
And
The
so what was
78th
your, what happened at Korea? Were you
I didn't-
eventually sent?
They didn't send anyone, they didn't send any of our unit people to Korea, but if they did, I would have had to drop out of the Citadel and go active. And that's what the regimental colonel said. He said, Pecorelli, we'll give you leave of absence from the reserve unit to get an education. But if we get activated, we're going to have to take you and you're going to have to go on active duty again. But they didn't activate me. I was permitted to do the summer training, the weekend training, but I was able to finish the Citadel. I graduated a class of 54 from the Citadel, Military College of South Carolina.
Other than these, I mean, we've discussed 2 wars now, but what were you doing for a living in between when you were in the reserve, for example? What was, after you left the Citadel, what was your job?
I was working for the newspaper, the Hearst newspaper. I was a reporter. I was an editor. I did writing. I did PR, public relations for certain companies, and I helped them with programs. I helped them to start youth programs to get the youth active in certain issues.
Well, that's a pretty good story in itself. A guy who dropped out of high school and ended up being a reporter and an editor and doing a lot of writing. So you picked up some education along the way, it sounds like.
Well, those are the miracles.
Yeah. Well, but also, let's face it, you're in a country where miracles happen, where
That's
people have
correct.
those kinds of opportunities.
That is correct.
Well, let me go back a minute to the 40s. How did you feel as an Italian American about Italy lining up with Germany?
It's interesting that you bring that up because the Italians voted against Mussolini and they killed him. They didn't like when going to war with America. There were many, 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 many Italians that were living in the United States and had relatives still in Italy. And the Italians were not favorable to their leadership in going to war against the United States. John Bastiglione, an Italian family man from Patterson, received the Congressional Medal of Honor. He was in the Marines. And the Italians were proud of America. Dio benedice America, God bless America, Grandma would say in Italian.
And you can remember your parents and grandparents saying that.
Yes.
Did you grow up speaking Italian around the house?
Yes, I spoke Italian. Yeah. When you're hungry, boy, you have to learn the language real fast to eat. So Grandma would make the meals, and I would talk Italian. I'd take her shopping and translate between her and the Jewish merchants that sold shirts, and I act as an interpreter.
So it sounds like if you were talking about Jewish merchants and Italian grandmothers, that where you were was a sea of immigrants.
Yes. Yes.
And was there a sense of of trying to help one another and make their way in America?
Yeah, they had little sections. There was a section in New Jersey where the people, the majority were Italian. But there was another section where they were Jewish, another section where they were Polish. And then we would start to, and the next thing you know, the Polish people invite us over for a Polish dinner, the Italian people. And it was a beautiful meld, if I might use that term. They were Polish, like when they would ask my grandmother, Da Donovan, where are you from? And she was from Naples. And they said, "Si Italian, you're Italian." No, 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 sono American. No, I'm an American.
Ah, isn't that's wonderful.
That is.
That's now when you moving back, coming into the 50s, you finished at the Citadel. You were an editor, a writer, did some publicity, and then all of a sudden, in the middle of the 60s, there's Vietnam. Tell me how you got involved in that.
I was on active duty in the reserves. They started a unit called Special Forces. And
Was that the Green Berets? Was that Kennedy's baby, the Special Forces?
that's right. And that was at Fort Bragg, had the headquarters for the Green Beret. And when we went as a reservist for the 2 weeks training, I was sent to Fort Bragg. And I started to train the individuals at Green Beret, Special Forces, and what we had to teach is we had to teach them that when someone with Special Forces gets an assignment, they have to act as if they were born in that country. In other words, if they went to Italy, they had to learn to eat Italian food. To make them part of, they sent them out in teams and to make them part of the training. It was a wonderful experience. It was a wonderful experience.
So you trained Special Forces at Fort Bragg, people going to Vietnam. This would have been in the early to mid 60s.
At that point, my enlistments were up, and I was working for the state of New Jersey in the Department of Economic Development, and I became a state worker. And in other words, I reached that age, and I worked. I worked for the Department of Commerce in New Jersey.
Now, did you at one point were you a state trooper or were you in law enforcement?
It's interesting. I have a state troopers. Yes, they had retired, and they called me out, and they said we have to make payments to homes that were damaged in hurricanes, and you know how to fill out the government forms. Would you come up on a 6-month assignment? I said, certainly. It was a friend. And I said, yeah, I'll help it, Dan. Well, that 90-day assignment turned into 12 years working for the New Jersey State Police in emergency management.
Wow. It sounds like you have a propensity for people with uniforms on.
I do. I did. You're absolutely right. You're
It
absolutely
saves on the dry cleaning bills.
Well, when they wear the uniform, they're proud. There's a sense of pride in themselves. Ask a Marine, what are you doing? Oh, he's a Marine, and he tells you he's a Marine.
Well, and one of the things I've learned around here, I have some friends who are Marines, that there's no such thing as a former Marine.
Yeah.
They're always Marines.
You're always a Marine.
Well, now, how did you come to Maine, and how long have you been in Maine?
Well, in Maine, we used to vacation in Maine, and we found this little Tilden Pond, and we spent 2 weeks there, and then my then wife said, "What do you say we buy a house on Tilden Pond?" and we bought a home. We would come up in the summer, and then the marriage ended in a divorce. And the wife took the house that we had on Cape May, New Jersey, and I took the house in Maine because I have a great love for this state. This is the state that started Wreaths Across America. This is the state that at the airport were greeters, troop greeters, and shake hands with every one of the troops that disembarked.
It's unbelievable. Have you gone up to Bangor to the airport for one of those greetings?
Yes,
It's
yes, sir.
fabulous.
Yes, sir.
That's an unbelievable experience. And when I meet veterans down here or active duty, even general types, the first thing they say is, oh, listen, coming back from Iraq, we came through Bangor and I'll never forget the experience.
That is correct. That is absolutely correct. We shook hands. We didn't ask them where they were going or where they were coming, but we shook hands with everyone that disembarked, stayed with them, and shook the hands with when they left. And I'm very, very proud of being a troop greeter. And the headquarters we have are a museum. They're still open.
Oh yeah, I've seen it. I've been there. I was there one night when a plane load came in, and I joined the group greeting them. They thought it was a little. They didn't really believe that a senator was there, but the other people vouched for me, so it worked out okay.
Yeah, and you shook hands with them, didn't you?
Sure, absolutely.
Well, another thing happened. I'm up there shaking hands. The troops are coming in, and I look up, and it's my son, who's a captain in the New Jersey National Guard, and his group was going over to Afghanistan. And then when they found out that it was a father-son thing, oh, the newspapers were taking pictures and.
And you didn't know that he was going to be in that group? That was just
No, I didn't know.
Well, he was decorated in the Middle East, wasn't he, your son?
Yeah, he got two. He got two Bronze Stars when he came to Afghanistan, and he was a good leader. He's a major now in the New Jersey National.
Is he still in the service?
Yes, sir.
I'll bet you didn't let him drop out of high school at 14.
That's right.
Yeah, I know your type.
Yeah.
Yeah, I once asked a guy, not unlike you, who went through the kind of experience, and I said, look, would you have hired yourself? And he thought about it and said, gee, I don't think I would have. Well, listen, you've had an amazing career, and what I think is great is you're continuing to serve veterans. You're still involved in the community. Now, I can't tell what it says on your hat. You got 3 wars under your belt. Which one is your hat honoring?
What it says is I'm a veteran of World War II, Korea, and Vietnam.
Wow, that's amazing. That is amazing. There can't be many people around that can claim that.
I've had generals tell me that when Wreaths Across America, when we get to Arlington, they have a general who's with the Citadel alumnus, and he came out to join putting the wreaths. And it's only for Maine that happened.
I know. I've been there. It's fantastic. In fact, last week I was up in Washington County and drove right through Wreaths Across America, and I call it Mora Worcester land.
Right.
But it's an inspiring project for sure.
Another thing about Wreaths Across America, when I took a stand with them, I told the owners about the 4 chaplains. The ship was torpedoed, and the chaplain was a rabbi, a Catholic priest, a Congregationalist. They gave their life jackets. When a trooper comes up and says, oh, there are no more life jackets, they would take their life jackets off and give it to them. And the last, when they were seen in the water, the four of them were together, each praying their own prayer.
Wow.
And because they did that, since it was not they couldn't get the Medal of Honor. So what they did, they got the Navy Cross, the Distinguished Service Cross. But the president also had them put in a special medal for the four chaplains. And when I told the owners who do Reach Across America about it, they built a chapel and named it in honor of those four chaplains.
Wow, and you told them that story.
They didn't know that. I told them that story.
Well, you know what I'm hearing, Carmine, is most of your life has been helping and guiding other people, bringing those pilots home in World War II, training in Korea, training the special forces in Vietnam. You've spent your whole life, not to mention raising a son who's a decorated war veteran, but you've spent your whole life trying to help people take a step forward. Is that fair?
Yes. And that's because Grandma, who was illiterate, couldn't read or write Italian, but would always speak. It's all because she said, Dio benedice America. God bless America. When they would say to her, other Italians, oh, si Napolitan, oh, you're from Naples. No, 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 sono American. No,
Well,
I'm American.
all right, I'm going to give you a chance. We're gonna wrap up, but I want you to give me "God Bless America" in Italian once more.
Dio benedice America. God is Dio. Benedice is bless America. God bless America.
God bless America, Carmine, and God bless you. Thanks for sharing with us today. What a pleasure, and I'll see you around up in Maine.
Thanks for prompting me.
A pleasure. See you, man. Take it easy.